Hey, welcome back to Magnetic Stringworks. So today on the workbench we're continuing with this 2023 Gibson Les Paul Tribute guitar, left-hand model. In the previous video we looked over the features and specs, checked the setup direct from the factory. Brand new, hasn't been touched. And really we only discovered maybe one little issue where the first and sixth strings touching the back of the bridge. I raise the tailpiece up. They're still touching a little bit, so when I take the strings off to do a string change setup, I will raise that tailpiece up a little more. But the client has asked me to put on these Ernie Ball regular Slinky 10 to 46s, and we're going to change out the bridge pickup for this Gibson 498T. Here we go. So this is a pretty hot pickup. So we'll see how that goes. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Magnetic Stringworks. Please remember to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell for more video content.
So we've already checked the specs in the previous video and everything was set up pretty nicely, so I don't anticipate any issues. So really the first thing to do is take off these strings, and then I'm going to take off the control cavity plate here, maybe the switch plate, we'll see if we need to. Yeah, so let's get started. Now the client has requested that when I take these strings off, before I do that, I'm just going to place a cloth under here. Looks like things are loose. There we go. So before, so I'm going to cut these off. Don't have to worry about pulling them through the tailpiece. The owners asked me to keep these little ends for them to use. Now I have several of these laying around the bench so that you can get into tight spots, clean out some gunk and that in bridge saddles, etc. So they're good to have in different sizes. So I'll keep these aside. I'll put them in the case for the owner to do with as he sees fit. Don't forget, any of these tail pieces are loose. They don't actually have anything to tighten them onto the posts, so make sure when you're removing the strings that you put something underneath. Same with the bridge, that's loose too, right? So remember which way it's going. So if you put it on the bench that way, you'll know. The other thing you can do is take a piece of tape and just put it like that on the end, and then what you can do is just write, because this is a lefty guitar too, don't get confused. I'm just going to put 1 for first string. Sometimes you put the saddle on or the bridge on the other way, and then you're wondering why you're fighting your intonation all the time, right? Anyways, there we go. So these posts, I did want to raise them up a little higher, so I'm going to take this opportunity to do that right now. Give them a few turns. You can always lower them, and hopefully we'll solve that saddle issue. Okay. Ooh, look at that in there. We have a circuit board. You have to see how easy it is to put that pickup in there. Alright, well, I've spoken with the client, and unfortunately I'm not going to be able to do anything with this electronic setup, putting this pickup in there. So you can see this pickup has one wire, and you have to ground it to the shielded cable. Here we've got 4 wires into a pin here, circuit board pin connector, so really I can't do anything with that. Maybe somebody else can. But I've talked with the owner and he's okay with that, so we're going to button this back up and we're just going to do a regular setup, and he'll see what he does with his pickups that he purchased. Alright, let's keep moving on. This is a new guitar, but I'm just going to take 1000 grit fret eraser here and just go over the frets a little bit. Get rid of any crusties that might be on there. There we go. And we'll put a little fretboard conditioner, some Dunlop 65. Put it on, let it sit on there for about 30 seconds or so, and just wipe it off. Again, newish guitar, so not too dry. The winter months are coming up, so I want to make sure that you do this, I'd say at least twice a year. You know, do it in the spring and fall. Again, this isn't a cleaner, right? It's just an oil, conditioner. If the fretboard was dirty with finger residue, dirt, clean it. Clean it with mild soap and water, before you do this step. And you'll notice that, the first application, the oil sometimes just sits on the top of it. So again, after I wipe it in, let it sit for a minute or so. And usually what happens is the residual oil will come up, like it's doing right now, and I can get back over it. Too much oil, leaves a gunky residue on the fretboard as you're playing, and actually can gum up your strings a little bit too. It doesn't feel good. So most people are aware that when you have a 3+3 headstock, your D and G strings generally have a pretty acute angle. I've noticed here that it's actually cut at an angle, which is very good, so that the angle is actually going to the post, which is nice. A lot of the older ones are just straight cut, so you get this really acute angle at the back. So when the nut is cut properly like this, you reduce the stress on the string as you're tuning it. Let me bring it in closer. So it might be hard to see, but there is an angle here. And there we go, I think you can see that. So it is going to the tuning post. So that's a really good thing. That's what it should look like. And that will definitely help the D and G strings from binding on the back of the nut, getting that pinging, popping sound. So just for good measure, since I have it, I'm going to use the D'Addario friction remover lubricant. I got some comments, people say, hey, that's just Vaseline. Yeah, it might be. Not sure. Sort of looks like it. I'm just going to put a little bit on each of these nut slots. And a little dab will do you. You don't need a lot. And as the string gets tuned, it'll work itself into the slot. Now you probably could do this at every string change if you feel you have an issue with tuning, you know, strings are binding, that kind of thing. I would probably say you don't need to do it at every string change. And if you really have an issue with the strings popping and binding, then it's probably because your nut slot, like I just showed you, is not cut at the angle. So I don't anticipate any issues with this guitar. Okay, so we're going to use these Ernie Ball regular Slinky 10 to 46s. I have to remember we're left hand, right? So we want to take the bridge, and remember we put the first string little piece of tape there so we know where we are. And we're going to take the tailpiece. Now you don't want the tailpiece flopping around everywhere, so you can put something under it like that. What I might do, since I have this Gibson cloth right here, just put that under. Make sure it doesn't get caught in the, there we go. And then I'll take this little piece of, will it fit now? No. Okay. Maybe I'll double up this cloth. How about that? There we go. So this way it's not going to flop out. If it does fall out, then it's sitting on the cloth, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. Alright. Let's string this pretty guitar up. So some people like to wrap it over the tailpiece. I don't like that. I don't think it looks good. It doesn't have any appreciable effect on tone. So I just like to string it up. So what I usually do though is I'm going to put the first, the sixth and the first string, the first and the sixth string, again, lefty guitar. I usually put those on first so that, you know, provide some tension against the tailpiece. So that's what we'll do. I'll take the two strings out, their packages. I'll run them through the tailpiece, over the top of the bridge, and then I can put them through the tuning post, provide some tension. So I'll never assume you've seen any of my videos or anyone else's, so I like to make sure the tuning post hole is facing the nut slot. Put a little tension on the string. So usually about, with the bass strings, about 1.5 tuners is good as far as the length. So what I like to do is go 1.5, and you can pull it back like that. You can do a few things. So we put it through first. Pull it tight, you know, not crazy tight, but tight enough. So 1.5, right about there. Pull it back, and then put a kink. And then you can start winding it. Now you always wind outside like that, right? So in this case, on this side of the headstock, it's going to be clockwise. Making sure that your string passes under the length of string above it. And also, especially with a black headstock like this, make sure that the string is not rubbing against the face of the headstock. That is not a good thing. I'll usually, you know, get the power tools out here, but, you know, I'm just going to show you here quickly, and maybe my hands are in the way, but, you know, it takes a little bit. You can also, if you have a string winder, like a manual one, that always works too. There we go, that's a little better, a little quicker. Now ideally you're going to have 2 or 3 wraps here for the bass strings, no more than that. And you have to ensure that they go under each other. Okay, so once you're close, make sure your string is in the nut slot. Straighten the string as well. And I've noticed that I need to push that string through the hole a little bit. So if you take some pliers and squeeze it down, a little tension. There we go. That will seat nicely around the post. Good. I like that. So again, we turn it till we get a little bit of tension on there. It doesn't have to be too much. We are going to tune this up in a minute. And do the same thing for the rest of the strings. So with the unwound strings, so the plain strings, first and second and third, same thing, but here we want to see 4 or 5 wraps. So I'm going to go past by at least 2 tuners, maybe a little more, 2.5. Pull it through, kink it up, and the same thing. I'm going to go outside in, right? Like inside out. Always going to the outside of the headstock. So in this case, we're going counterclockwise. And I'll use the hand winder, get underneath that top part of the string, and just make sure you're not rubbing on the top of the headstock. Right, so that's why you bend this up, and you shouldn't have any issues. I see a lot of guitars that have these circular rings around the tuning posts because the string has been just rubbing up against the headstock as you tighten it up. So you have to be careful with the painted black headstocks especially. Okay. Again, making sure I'm underneath. Okay. I'll take the pliers sometimes, again, come in here, pinch that, make sure it's good and straight. You can also take a little flathead screwdriver like this. Carefully just go underneath, push up. Make sure those wraps are nice and tight up against each other as you start to put tension on it. There we go. Good. Now I will cut off these tails. We don't need that much. But I'd leave a little bit because sometimes you need to get back in there and grab something. Alright, we'll do the rest of them. Okay, we're strung up and I'm just tuning up the guitar. I'm listening for any pings and pops, especially in the D and G here. So far so good. Go back to the D. Yeah, it's tuning nice and smooth. I like that. Okay. So once everything it's in tune, now's the time to stretch the strings, right? So I like to grab around the 12th fret, so the middle of the guitar, and just pull these strings up 5-6 times. Especially the wound strings, those are the ones. Now this first pull, generally going to pull like a semitone at least out of these strings, so fully expecting them to be at least a semitone out of tune. That's good. So you're going to do this, I like to do it at least 3 times. And then with play the strings will settle in place, but that way it gets any kinks out of the string, and you'll notice right away if you hear any popping sounds, up at the nut or even from the tuning posts. Alright, I'm going to let this sit probably overnight, check it again tomorrow, and we'll do a quick setup. So we're going to just do the setup here. I mean, when it came in, it's brand new, it was in pretty good shape as far as the string height goes, neck relief, the whole thing. The one thing that was a problem was here at the bridge, but I've raised the tailpiece up, so now we can get our paper under there, just under, So that's good, and we still have a decent brake angle. So that's fixed. So now we'll check a couple of things. We're going to look at the intonation, we're going to look at the neck relief and the string height. So let's look at the neck relief, see if anything's changed. I haven't touched anything as far as the bridge goes, so nothing should change in that sense. Same gauge of string, so I'm not really anticipating any major changes here. Maybe just some adjustments in the intonation. Alright, so let's check the neck relief. Capo on the first. I think we were around 9 thousandths, so I can use 9 again. Let's try that. So again, lefty, just checking out the treble side. Just touching. So that's, it's probably, we're close to 8 maybe. Yeah. So that would probably need to be adjusted a little bit, but I'm not hearing anything, right? So I wouldn't really leave it. So 8,000 to 10 thousandths is a nice low neck relief for this style of guitar. So let's check the string height. So for a Les Paul guitar at the 12th fret, we like to see, well, the spec is 5 64ths on the bass side, 3 64ths on the treble. So using my string height gauges, let's try 3 here. Yeah, that's right on. So that's good on the first string. And then we'll go for 5 on the bass side on the 6th string. It's right there too. So only 2 adjustments on a tune-o-matic bridge, 1st and 6th string, so we're good there. So on the fretboard, the last thing we'll look at is the nut action, so the string height at the 1st fret. So if you push down on the 3rd, that string is basically touching the 1st fret now. So I'm going to say we're probably 18 thousandths or less. Oop, sorry, I'm zoomed in there. Yeah, it's just barely touching. So 18 thousandths at the 1st fret is very nice. I wouldn't go lower than that, certainly on a new guitar, because the strings will eat into the nut over time. And if you decide to go with a lower gauge string, then it's going to drop down the action a little bit. So we're good. Okay, well, let's check the intonation. So make sure, so we tune up. So here we're going to tune up the 6th string. Get it close. These are new strings too, so it takes a while sometimes for them to settle in. Try the harmonic. Pretty good. And the fretted note. That's pretty darn good, Let's look at the A. So we're a little sharp here. Retune. Always come up to the note on a non-locking tuner. Get it close. Harmonic. Maybe a touch flat. A little bit sharp. The D. So, we're just going to go along each one of the strings and work on them. A little sharp. Let me try the 1st string. Yeah, so it looks like the strings are a touch sharp. Again, that could be the new strings, but I'll work on that. Let me show you how you adjust that. Okay, with a tune-o-matic bridge, you have these screws which allow you to move the saddle back and forth. So they're a little hard to get to. Sometimes they're in the front, sometimes they're in the back. But I don't want to damage the tailpiece, so I do want to loosen the string. So here we are. So the A here, 5th string, is a little sharp. So I'm going to loosen off the string here. Take it off the saddle. And so we're a little sharp, so that means we want to lengthen the string. So I'm going to turn the screw and lengthen the saddle. Now, this is a trial and error, so make a half turn. Wasn't much. Retune. Get it close. There we go. Harmonic. Still a touch sharp, so I'll adjust that again. So I'll go through each of the strings and I'll adjust them one by one in that fashion. Alright, so the intonation is all done, so that's looking pretty good. Again, it's going to be as close as you can get it. It's not going to be perfect. Put this away. So the last thing to do, the last thing to do is to check the pickup height. So again, I'll use one of my string pickup gauges. Press down the last fret, and on the bass side I like to see 1/8. That's too high. That's too high. And on the treble side, 3/32. Sorry, I'm backwards. Left hand. Let's do that again. Treble side, 3/32. Still too high. That one's pretty good. Bass side, 1/8. Too high. That one's pretty good. So the bridge pickup's okay. They move a lot, these pickups. Let me see if we can drop this down a bit. Alright, well, we're all done with this nice guitar. So this 2023 Gibson Les Paul Tribute in the satin honeyburst, really pretty. Set up really nicely from the factory, very impressed. No issues with the string height, neck relief, or the action at the first fret. Fit and finish of the guitar, very nice. Well, only thing was the tailpiece was too low. Strings were touching here. First and sixth strings were touching the back of the bridge. We fixed that. Intonation is good. Everything works well. So if you're looking for a relatively inexpensive Les Paul and notch up from a studio, definitely this Tribute is a really good option. So I hope you liked the video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.